Hi, I'm Deborah from Embody Nature, and I am a trauma and emotional regulation coach, and I'm here today to talk about attachment and understanding why we chase connection. So if you are here for the first time, welcome to this space. It's a beautiful space where we can connect and talk about all of the patterns that run our systems underneath and really impact on how we turn up in our relationships and in our parenting. And if you are returning, thanks for coming back. I love seeing you guys again and again, week after week. And I love all the conversations that we have in between. So welcome. Send me some highs. Let me know you're there. If you've got any questions, pop them in the chat and pop any comments. But yeah, wave, say hi, and grab yourself a cuppa and we will connect. So yeah, really glad you're here today. And I guess I want to talk about something today that I see over and over in my work with individuals, couples, and parents. And it's something that can often cause us a bit of shame, and yet it is really incredibly common. It's that feeling of always wanting a little bit more connection than your partner seems to. Maybe you're the one initiating the conversations. Maybe you're the one asking for all the hugs. Maybe you're the one wanting more quality time and more physical intimacy. And somewhere along the way, you've started wondering, am I just too needy? Why do I need more connection than they do? And why does that feel like I'm always chasing? And I know for me, I get to a point where if I feel like I'm always chasing, then my walls go up and I kind of flip the game and just kind of go, well, fuck you. If you're not being connecting with me, I'm not going to connect with you. And then my real immature 7-year-old comes out and, that game never turns into fun. But, this is what we do. This is what our patterns bring up for us. So if you've ever asked these questions, I really just want you to know something. You're not alone. And today I want to help offer a different perspective for you, because maybe you're not chasing your partner. Maybe your nervous system is chasing the feeling of safety that connection brings for you. So, and I guess thinking about why this matters, one of the biggest misunderstandings I see is that people judge themselves for having these attachment needs. We live in a culture that often celebrates this independence, that, we're hearing messages like, I don't need anyone, I can do this on my own, we need to be less emotional, you just need to love yourself a bit more. But I guess here's the thing, we were never designed to live life completely alone. From the moment we're born, our nervous system develops through relationships. As babies, we are far too vulnerable to just be left alone. We need, hi Zach, thanks for the love. As babies, we are just far too vulnerable and we need that connection. We're driven with that connection. And it's what keeps us alive, so that when we cry, somebody responds. And that's what we need. We need people to connect and meet our needs. And as children, I guess we learn that the world feels safe through relationships. And as adults, we still regulate through connection. And it's not a weakness. That's actually biology. This is how we're built. We are wired for connection. And the problem isn't that we need connection. The problem is many of us have learned that connection wasn't always predictable. And when connection doesn't feel predictable, our nervous system starts working really hard to protect us and to keep us safe. So if we think about what the nervous system's job is, so one of the things I love teaching is that your nervous system has one primary job, and that is to keep you safe. It's not to make you happy. It's not to find the love of your life or help you enjoy things better. Its number one priority is survival. And I guess that means it's constantly scanning your environment, asking this one question, am I safe? And most people think danger only really means physical danger, but our nervous system also scans for that emotional danger and that psychosocial danger. So things like, am I accepted? Do I belong? Am I important? Will this person stay connected to me? These are things that if we're not feeling these things, we will feel unsafe. So if your early experiences taught your nervous system that connection was maybe inconsistent, unpredictable, or emotionally unsafe, your brain stores all that as information, not as memory, but as a survival pattern deep in your subconscious layers. So years later, your partner might simply be exhausted after work. They might need a quiet evening, or they might like fall asleep on the couch. But your subconscious mind interprets that differently. So I guess objectively, nothing is wrong with that. But for my nervous system or your nervous system, it might quietly whisper, something feels different. Are we still okay? Have I done something wrong? And so we're just scanning, and we're starting to feel this level of anxiety because something's not just sitting quite right here. And that's why these moments can feel so much bigger than what they really are sometimes. And I don't want to invalidate those feelings when our nervous system is picking up on the cues that something is wrong, because I think there's also this contrary side where sometimes we have all the red flags waving in our face and we just ignore them. So I'm not asking for us to do that, but just really looking at in those situations where maybe the evidence is being overpowered by our own, I guess, internal system and our view. So it's being filtered through the way that we've seen the world in the past. Another thing, I guess, when we're thinking about connection is we're thinking about sex. And I guess it's something many couples experience some disconnection in that area, but don't often talk about. So sometimes people think they're longing for more physical intimacy. And sometimes they are, but quite often physical intimacy can represent something much deeper. It represents closeness, reassurance, a sense of feeling chosen, and feeling emotionally connected. So for someone with an anxious attachment style, intimacy can become one of those ways that the nervous system confirms we're okay here. So when intimacy isn't there, it can accidentally feel like emotional distance. Not because your partner is rejecting you, but because your nervous system has kind of linked this sense of connection with intimacy, and also with this sense of safety. So it becomes this kind of cycle where we're really, if we're not sitting in that space of intimacy, we can feel disconnected, and then we can do things that make us feel even more disconnected, and then we don't feel like the intimacy. So before you know it, we've actually, this vicious cycle has sort of started. So I'd really just like to know now, I know some of us have a real clear understanding of what our predominance is, but have you ever noticed yourself creating a story when someone you love simply needed space? And I wonder if you want to pop connection in the comments if you're someone who actually reaches for closeness, or space if you're someone who tends to need a little time alone when you're finding you're stressed or you need to recharge or recalibrate. So when you're feeling unsafe, do you tend to move towards connection or space? Neither is right, neither is wrong. I guess there's simply different ways that our nervous system has learned to feel safe. And in a moment, I'm going to explain why this creates one of the most common relationship dynamics that I see, and how understanding it can completely change the way that you respond to each other in relationships. So I guess we're going to start looking at this beautiful dance that so many couples get stuck in. Let's talk about one of the most common relationship patterns I see. So this is one partner seeks closeness because closeness helps them feel calm and connected. The other partner seeks space because space helps them feel calm and connected. Neither person is trying to hurt the other intentionally, and neither person loves the other person any less. They're simply trying to regulate their own nervous system in different ways. But here's what often happens. The more one partner reaches for connection, the more the other partner can feel overwhelmed and starts to pull away. And the more that partner pulls away, the more the other partner feels anxious and sort of reaches in even harder. And they call this the infinity cycle in the relationship world, where we're just really following this figure of 8 or this infinity sign where, you know, the anxious person is chasing the avoidant person who's then being pushed away, and we keep on chasing ourselves in this cycle. And it's only when one person stops and reflects and goes, this is what I'm doing, and decides that we're going to jump off the cycle, that this cycle kind of stops. So can you see that cycle happening in your relationship sometimes? I think now that you know that, I encourage you to look for it. So what seems to happen is the person seeking connection starts thinking, why won't you let me in? And the person seeking space starts thinking, well, why won't you let me breathe? And neither partner is wrong. They're both just trying to create that sense of safety. They're just speaking, I guess, different nervous system languages. And until we understand the language underneath the behavior, we keep arguing about the behavior itself. So we think of the iceberg again. If we're just looking at what's above the water, the behavior, and we're not looking at what's underneath the surface, which is the feelings or those unmet needs, we are just going to be stuck in just blowing up over the behavior and getting stuck in that sort of side of things. And behavior is just information. It just shares with us something's actually going on below the surface, and we can choose to be curious or we can choose to get upset at the behavior. But as we look at the stuff below the surface, that's when things shift in our relationships. So one of the most helpful tools that I use with clients is something I call the 3 layers. So I guess if you're thinking the first layer, when we're thinking about, unpacking what's going on in some of these situations where we're feeling like where this anxious attachment is triggering for us, or this avoidant attachment is triggering for us. So the first layer is looking at the facts. The second layer is looking at the story and what's actually going on. And the third layer below that is really looking at the need underneath. So I guess let's walk through an example. Imagine your partner comes home from work, they're quiet, they don't say much, and at dinner, after dinner, they fall asleep on the couch. So if we're looking at that first layer of the facts, just imagine yourself watching this scenario through a video camera and almost recounting what you see. So the facts are your partner came home, they were quiet, they ate their dinner, they fell asleep. And that's it. That's the facts. And I guess it's an interesting thing. So if we're not interpreting it, that is just what went on. But the thing that happens, and this is where it gets interesting, is we add a story to this. So we might project this story. Our nervous system doesn't like uncertainty. And if this is different behavior that we normally experience, we might fill in the gaps. We might start thinking, oh, they're upset with me. Oh, they're losing interest in me, or I'm not important anymore. Or you might even think, hey, I've done something wrong here. Or they don't want to spend time with me. Can anyone relate to that? Like, this is the story that we layer on things that we see. And I guess the important thing to remember is those thoughts feel really true for you, but they are all just stories. They are interpretations and they're not facts. And I guess these stories are often shaped by our earlier experience of love, connection, and safety, and we're viewing it through that lens. So if as a child that connection felt unpredictable, your brain becomes very good at noticing anything that feels like distance, not because you're broken, but because your brain is actually trying to protect you. So I guess let's go a step deeper here. If we get to level 3 and we start looking at the need, so this is the most important layer. It's also the one that we rarely talk about. So underneath the story is usually a very human need. That need to feel seen, to feel chosen, to feel important, to feel loved, to feel safe, connected, accepted. So when I guess we recognize those needs underneath the story, everything changes. So instead of saying, you never want to spend time with me, we can say, I'm noticing I'm feeling a bit disconnected today. Could we spend 10 minutes together tonight? Because it really helps me feel close to you. So can you see the difference in how we're approaching things? If we're noticing the facts that are happening, we're becoming aware of what stories we might project on that. And then we start looking at the need that's underneath that. So, and I really encourage you to sort of name all of that. So name what you see as the facts. You know, what I'm seeing is these facts. And then name what you see as your story. And for me, I know my story is an abandonment story. So I can often feel rejected with distance. So I know if I name that's my story, And then I go into the what's my need, right? My need is for connection, and it is to feel accepted. So if I can name all that, and particularly if I can then ask for what those needs are and actually ask for my needs to be fulfilled by my partner, I guess the difference, it just creates such a different space. So with that first response of saying, oh, you never want to spend time with me, that really creates defensiveness in the space. And the other response can really create understanding and curiosity. So this is where healing begins, not by ignoring our needs, which is something I would always do. I'd just push down the needs and just try to pretend that I didn't need anything, and I'd try to be, the cool girl, the fun girl, all that kind of stuff. And then meanwhile, my needs were being suppressed. And, I thought the conversation was too difficult to have until I started having these conversations and realized actually asking for my needs is a really simple thing. Can I have a hug right now? Because I just feel I need some connection. It's actually much easier to do than you think, but it's much, our nervous system, for me, I used to find it much easier to sit in the resentment of, can't they see I want a hug? When are they going to reach out for me? Without actually taking a bit of responsibility in that space for myself. So, hi Flea, hi Heather, hi Zach, nice to have you here. All right, so if we can really look at some practical regulation before communication. So what do we do when we notice our nervous system becomes activated? So the first thing to do is to pause. Not because your feelings don't matter, but because your nervous system needs a moment before your words can come out. So I often encourage clients to sort of ask themselves these simple questions. What am I feeling? Can I name it? Is it lonely, rejected, anxious, disconnected? So naming those emotions helps calm the brain. So naming it to tame it. And it brings back our thinking mind online. And the second thing is, what story am I creating? What assumptions am I making? Am I filling in those gaps? And the third thing is, what do I actually need? Is it reassurance? Is it a hug? Is it a conversation? Is it time together? Or perhaps I just simply need to know that we're okay. And the fourth thing is there another possible explanation? Could my partner simply be tired, stressed, overwhelmed? They might be coming down with a cold, or they might have actually had some things go on in their world, and because they're the type of person that keeps it to themselves, they've been processing other stuff. And while it looks like they're withdrawing, it's because they don't want to, put this negative stuff they're experiencing onto us. So, in their sense, they're wanting to maintain connection by not overloading us with their own stuff. So sometimes there is a different layer. And I guess if we don't ask the question or have this conversation, we never really know what's going on underneath the surface for the other person. And I don't know about you, but when I'm in this moment where I'm stuck in the conflict, I'm not thinking about the other person. I'm stuck in my own big feelings. And I think that's the challenge, is to be able to switch the hat and just go, right, I wonder what's happening for this person right now. But first, I need to know what's going on for me, and can I ask for my needs to be met? So one of my favorite questions before I react is also asking myself this question: how old does this feeling feel? So like if I'm feeling like I'm actually turning into my 7-year-old self here now, or my 13-year-old self, am I feeling like I've kind of gone somewhere different and this is a different version of me popping out? It's not my mature, regulated, 50-plus-year-old person that's showing up and knowing exactly what I need in the world and able to, communicate that. Am I looking at a 3-year-old that hasn't even got the language right now? So I guess, if we can actually notice, the version of ourselves that's showing up, that can be really useful. Maybe one of our younger versions has learnt, I have to work hard to stay connected, or I might be left. Sometimes that feeling of I'm not enough, I learned that when I was younger. I was always feeling like I was never good enough. You might feel like, what's wrong with me? But what we can do instead is we can gently say, of course this feels big, My nervous system is remembering something old. And this doesn't mean that we ignore it. It just means that we care for it. Because healing isn't about pretending that we don't have these attachment needs. Healing is learning to recognize them, to regulate them, communicate them, and to create relationships where it's actually safe to share them. And I think this is a really key part. So I'd love you to take a moment and reflect on this. The next time you feel upset with someone you love, ask yourself, what are the facts? What is the story I'm telling myself? And what is the need underneath the story? And I'd love you to share in the comments which one of these 3 layers you think you spend the most time in, or maybe find the most complex. So awareness is the first step towards change, and awareness without judgment is where healing begins. So I think one of the biggest myths that we find about secure attachment is that people believe it means never feeling anxious. It's this dream of when we're securely attached, we'll never get triggered, we'll never need reassurance, we'll never have conflict. But that's not secure attachment. Secure attachment isn't about the absence of needs. It is the confidence that your needs can be expressed. They can be heard, and then they can be repaired. It's knowing that a difficult conversation doesn't mean the relationship is over. It's trusting that moments of disconnection don't have to become permanent disconnection. And secure attachment is built through hundreds of small moments. And it can be the way that we greet each other after work, the goodbye kiss before leaving the house, the hug in the kitchen, the smile across the room, the text message that just simply says, thinking of you. So researchers call these bids for connection, and they're small ways we reach towards one another during the day. And every time we notice and respond to those bids, we send a really powerful message to each other's nervous systems. It's messages like, I see you, you matter, and I'm here. And over time, these small moments create something incredibly powerful, and that is trust. So one of the healthiest things that we can learn is that secure relationships make room for both connection and also for space. So it's not one or the other, it's both. And so you could think about this like breathing. You inhale and then you exhale. You couldn't spend your whole life inhaling, and also you couldn't spend your whole life exhaling. You actually need both to make the whole system work. So if we're thinking about that sort of biosphere in our relationships work the same way. Sometimes we move towards one another and we need that connection, and sometimes we move back to ourselves and we take that space. Both of these movements are healthy. Space isn't rejection necessarily, and space allows us to rest, to recharge, and to reconnect with ourselves. So connection reminds us that we're not alone, and healthy couples don't fear space either. They communicate around it. So they might say something like, I really want to keep talking about this because this relationship matters to me, but right now I'm feeling overwhelmed and I need, half an hour to settle my nervous system. Can we come back to this after dinner? Can you hear the difference? They're not walking away, they're communicating a need and creating certainty about when they'll reconnect. And that's what emotional safety looks like. It also means encouraging each other to have sort of lives beyond the relationship and to spend time doing the things that we love. And so for me, it's like time in nature and running and my writing. These are the things that sort of bring me joy. And seeing my friends, having the things that, give you that sense of your own identity rather than just being caught up in the identity of your partnership. And we need that time to look after our own well-being. Because when we nurture ourselves, we don't place the full responsibility of our regulation on our partner. That's not independence, that's interdependence. And we want to be able to know that I can care for myself, but I can also let you care for me too. And that's when the beauty happens together. So I guess this is what I'm really passionate in the work that I do. Because most people try to change their relationships by changing their behavior. They sort of try harder, communicate better, read another book, listen to another podcast. And I guess while those things can absolutely help, they often don't change the underlying pattern below the surface because the behavior isn't the root of the problem. The nervous system is responding to experiences that were laid down sometimes decades ago. So our early relationships shape the beliefs we carry about ourselves and others. So beliefs like I'm not enough, I have to earn love, people leave, and my needs don't matter. So all this is going on. So those beliefs become stored in our body and the nervous system, so they're influencing how we respond long before our thinking brain catches up. So that's why my work isn't just about teaching the strategies, and while these strategies are incredible, but it's also about working below the surface and actually going back to the source of some of these points where we fragment and we start to take on these beliefs and these patterns. So if we can go back to that source and really understand why we are wired like we are, it really opens us up to changing some of that wiring, because we are really malleable, and we can change the way that our brain is wired, because that's just the beauty of our brains. There's just so much scope for healing and things changing. So, we can look through, I guess, when we're looking about helping our nervous system, we can really start to teach it that it's feeling safe, not from the cognitive way of thinking, but from deep below the surface in that embodied space, the space that tries to keep us safe all the time. So I want you to leave you with one final thought. When I walk through a beautiful spot in nature, I'm always reminded of relationships. So trees grow together. Their branches reach towards one another, creating shelter, shade, and connection. But each tree has its own roots. It doesn't lose itself in the forest. Its strength comes from being deeply rooted while being still connected. So I think healthy relationships are exactly the same. We weren't designed to lose ourselves in another person, and we weren't designed to do life alone. We were designed to be deeply rooted in who we are while growing in our connection with others. So if you're listening today and you recognize yourself, maybe you realized you have an anxious attachment style, maybe you recognize that sort of pursue and withdraw cycle in your relationship, and maybe you've noticed the nervous system that's been telling stories that no longer serve you. So I want you to know this. You're not broken. Your nervous system has simply been trying to protect you with the best information it had at the time. And the beautiful thing is our nervous system is that we can learn, we can heal, and we can become more secure. So you don't have to keep living the same relationship patterns over and over again. So if this conversation has resonated with you and you're ready to understand your patterns more deeply, not just intellectually, but in a way that creates that lasting change, I would love to support you. And this is exactly the work that I do. So together we'll explore those stories beneath the behaviors, regulate your nervous system, and strengthen your connection with yourself, and just help build those relationships that feel calmer, safer, and more connected. So feel free, send me a message, drop connect in here today, and we can book a clarity call and just find out where you're at and help you move towards that goal of having those better relationships with yourself, with your partner, and with your children and your families. So this isn't, it's about coming home to the person that you were always meant to be. So thanks for spending time with me today. I hope you're having a great day. And I just really want you to imagine how amazing it could be if you no longer had your nervous system ruling your relationships, and you could have these free, beautiful, connected, lovely relationships where your needs could be met. So enjoy your Saturday, have a great day, and chat to you soon. See ya.